Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves. Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
This is the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell.
Welcome to the Making Waves VO podcast. It's Kevin Kilpatrick here in Nashville.
And Bobby Maxwell in Nashville North.
I love that. It's just so weird not being in Cincinnati. By the way, your Zoom still says Cincinnati, so you may want to fix that.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't think I have my
Yeah.
picture up there either. I'm so behind. I don't even have a studio camera anymore in this new location.
Oh, well, you got to fix that for sure.
Yeah.
By the way, the Making Waves VO podcast is presented by Full Compass. Log on to fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
And Full Compass is going to have major that's my alarm to remind me that Emmet Andrews is going to be joining us in just a second. But Full Compass is going to be present big time at VO Atlanta, Bobby.
One of the major sponsors. I just saw the artwork a couple days ago, and yeah, one of the premier sponsors, and they're going to have actually information in the swag bag when you get it, when you check in, and we'll tell you about some more goodies later on in the podcast.
Yeah, but just know that you definitely need to make a stop by the Full Compass booth at VO Atlanta because you will most likely be rewarded in some way or another.
Very, very cool.
Yeah. So how's your week been, Bobby?
It's not as February has a little bit of a slowdown compared to January. Don't know why, but it is. But I'm okay with that. I'm still unpacking boxes here.
Yeah.
How about you?
Staying busy with e-learning and car stuff. I've been put on hold for 3 things here in the last couple of weeks.
Ooh.
One of them was like, Kevin, you are taken off hold. You are released. They went with somebody else.
Aww.
That's the way I hear it in my head, by the way. They were much more nicer in the email.
It's probably just let the other guys know they didn't get it.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. It essentially, but I'm still on hold for the couple others, which is cool. I actually also just did one of Mary Lynn Wisner's pro voiceover workouts with Brent Allen Hagel.
How was that?
It was amazing.
I've interacted with him on LinkedIn, just back and forth questions. He just seems to know everything about trailer.
He is a cool cat. And he's so passionate and was so energetic and giving. And taking that class was a little bit of an eye-opener for me. It was like, do I have something to offer in that world? I've never really considered it so much because it's so super competitive. And there's just a few of the elite that are getting those kinds of jobs.
Yeah.
But I was very encouraged and inspired by what he did and the way he worked me over and that kind of stuff. So
Did he tell
very
you how
cool.
you can get trailer jobs and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Very cool.
His model is go to the producers, go to the people that are making the content. If you can get on a roster, that's fine. But he did a ton of legwork. He started at the age of 17 with a determination of being a movie trailer guy.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last 2+ decades, he's been working towards that. And that just goes to show you that in this business we're in, Bobby, it doesn't happen overnight. Maybe for a handful it might happen overnight in like a couple of years' time. But it's such a hard business we are in.
Yeah, remember Daniel Ross saying that? I mean, how long it took him to get where he is. Yeah.
It was like 10+ years he had been working on it, and he finally got some big breaks. Daniel Ross did. Animation voice. If you don't know Daniel, he's amazing. But you can look him up. But yeah, same for Brent Allen Hagel. And just a sweet, sweet guy, very passionate, very hardworking. You can tell he's hardworking. His thing was he basically pounded the pavement so much that they just had to give him some work so that he would stop bothering them. That's kind of like what I got from him. But yeah, it was cool stuff.
And he had you perform a couple times?
Yeah.
What did you do? Do you remember?
I did a horror piece, and then I did a kids So I did Amityville Horror: The Awakening, and then which was released like 5 years ago. You know, you work on older scripts,
Right.
and then I did Peter Rabbit, the James Corden Peter Rabbit. So
fun.
totally different things, and maybe I'll play them for you because I happened to hit record while I was doing that, and. Anyway, we'll do that. We're going to be joined by Emmet Andrews. Emmet Andrews is amazing, and Bobby, he is in the Zoom room.
Well, let's let him in by all means. Don't make the man wait.
Hang around. We'll be back shortly.
As a voice actor, you want to focus on what's important, right? Like pulling off the perfect read. You don't want to stress about tech stuff. That's why Full Compass is in your corner. With 50 years experience in pro audio, Full Compass has everything we voice actors need. Mics, headphones, monitors, mixers, interfaces, DAWs, all the goodies. And their certified product experts help with everything they sell. Plus, you can get free same-day shipping, flexible financing, and a low price guarantee. See it all at fullcompass.com. Fullcompass.com. They know VO.
Making Waves returns.
All right, he's here. He's a voice actor, producer, scriptwriter, studio technician, self-proclaimed noise geek, and author of the book, VO Studio Companion, the Home Voiceover Recording Instruction Manual. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Emmet Andrews. Welcome, Emmet.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sounds so pompous when you read that whole list all at once.
But it's
these
all
are all
true.
your
Yeah.
accolades. It's good to have you on the Making Waves VO podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time out and joining us. We wanted to talk, Emmet, with you about tech stuff because this is something that voice actors deal with. Before we get into some of that tech stuff, let's get into your background, your history, and your journey into voiceover because you're a radio guy, right?
I am sort of. I don't consider myself a radio guy because it's almost kind of an insult these days when you're trying to do voice acting and being called a radio guy. You don't want to sound radio.
Oh, we know.
But
We know big time.
but even more than that, I'm just an audio guy, and I landed in radio because of that. So my first real job was at a radio station, but I didn't get into it because I was into radio. I got into it because there wasn't a recording studio in my hometown, and radio was the closest thing we had.
Wow. And where was that?
That was Newton, Iowa, back when I was a wee little pup, 16 years old, just after my 16th birthday.
Oh, you've been into this for a while.
I have been 27 years this year.
Wow. Where are you now?
I'm in Indianapolis now. I work for Radio 1. I moved here and worked for MS Communications, who I had previously worked for in St. Louis. And MS divested in radio, sold off their stations, and so now I'm with Urban One.
I remember when that happened, Emmet. It was like everybody was crying because MS was such a cool company to work for.
It really was, and Jeff, the CEO, the corporate headquarters are here in Indy, so I got to know him and got to know the corporate people, and just very much loved working for the company. When I worked in St. Louis, they had downsizing, and I was let go, and you would think there would be some bitterness with that, but I couldn't wait to get back on with MS. I just thought they were a great company all around.
Yeah.
What are you doing in radio right now? What's your tell us your title?
My title is officially Creative Services Manager.
Oh my gosh! So you're doing a crap ton of stuff.
There's a lot of work, yeah. So I oversee technically all the commercial production and the imaging. I kind of stay out of the imaging. The guy who does the imaging is very good, very independent, and really doesn't need anybody looking over his shoulder. So I only oversee that on paper, but the commercial part I'm very heavily involved with, lots of writing and just making sure everything that we ship out is good, whether I produce it or somebody from my team produces it.
How many stations are there in the cluster there?
There are now, because there were existing Radio 1 stations and they bought us, we have 8 radio stations, a TV station, and a statewide network.
Wow. That's crazy.
Where does this love of audio come from? The technical side of audio, since a kid, or when did that evolve?
That's actually a funny story. I tell this story every once in a while. I was not very technical as a kid. not in any real way, and I didn't have much interest in it. And one day, when I was about 12 years old, my dad was trying to copy a VHS tape, just from one machine to another, and he was fighting with it and struggling with it and couldn't figure it out. And I went to bed that night, and about 1:30 in the morning, I woke up and I knew how to do it. And I ran down the stairs and hooked up all the stuff, and it worked. It worked immediately. And suddenly I just, for no apparent reason, understood the signal flow of everything. And it kind of grew from there. I was just interested in doing that, and I just had this kind of base understanding. And I have no idea where that came from or why it popped into my head. But I just learned more and more and more. I ordered all the catalogs from all the pro audio sales companies, and I would just read them cover to cover, read every description and learn everything I could about all of the gear and kind of picture how it would connect together in my head. And then just over time, bought my own and continued to learn and continued to study.
Wow. Do you think that you have, what's that called, where a photographic memory?
I don't think so, but I am autodidactic, which means I teach myself better than other people teach me. So I often joke that while my friends were busy screwing around in college, I was busy learning. When I was about 20 or 21 years old, I printed off around 10,000 pages worth of all the audio material I could find, and I would just sit around my apartment reading it. I was not a very exciting 20 or 21-year-old.
Hey, it's Amanda from Amanda Utter VO, and you're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with my friends, Kevin and Bobby. Thanks for listening.
I'm trying to be more autodidactic, but it's just not working.
That's how I found out about Emmet, was through one of the Facebook groups. And thank goodness he has helped me personally. This is the third time, I think, a couple of weeks ago. You know so much. And I see you chime in a lot of the questions that talent are asking about tech. And you're so quick to offer help and not take a penny for it. And thank you so much for that. It's just so refreshing in a business where a lot of people were out to make a dime,
When I was learning back in my teenage years, I would frequent they weren't Adobe at that time. They were the Centrillium forums, the Cool Edit forums. And there was this guy named Steve G on those forums. I don't remember his actual last name, but he went by Steve G. And he seemed to know everything. And I thought that was so cool. And so I kind of hung on his every word and learned as much as I could. And then there was sort of a point somewhere where it shifted, and I started being the one who knew the more advanced answers. And then I thought that was really cool. But I still remember Steve and the fact that he answered everything, every question that popped up. He was there to provide an answer. And if he didn't have an answer, he would dig for an answer, or he would hypothesize. And I just thought that was really cool. And I guess I kind of followed in those footsteps.
There's a lot of people that would thank you for that. I'm one as well. Bobby talked about that, the help you gave her, and you've given me help, advice on gear and stuff like that, which P.S. I still have not purchased that Apollo, but I'm going to. And when I do, I'm going to set up a session with you so I can get it dialed in and so I can set it and forget it. And kind of backtracking just a little bit on the Facebook. So Emmet is part of these same Facebook groups that Bobby and I are part of, and it's the Facebook Pro Voiceover community, I think, is where I see you the most, right, Emmet?
I'm in there quite a bit. There are a handful of groups that I frequent. My favorite one is probably VO Tech Talk.
Okay.
The problems that crop up in there tend to be a little bit more advanced, and those are a little more fun to troubleshoot. And and
like
a lot
to flex
of
those muscles.
I do, and a lot of the people in there tend to be more advanced users, so the conversations go in geekier places than somebody who just got their first mic and their first DAW and interface and are trying to do basic setup.
Yeah, I'm picturing a Tim Allen Home Improvement moment where you guys are going, when you're talking about. Yeah, exactly. And listen to that right there. Not only is Emmet a studio technician, but he's also a voice actor. Tell us about what you're working on and what you've been working on voice actor-wise. I saw some of your videos. They're great.
Oh, thank you. I have done quite a bit of stuff, and a large portion of it is at my day job. And I'm very fortunate that both Emmis and Urban One allow me to kind of expand out from that. So I can work with clients beyond what they do with the stations, and they can hire me for their individual projects. They can take my work to other stations, and I charge for all of that. And I've actually gotten a few national things through those kinds of channels where it has originated at the station group and then fanned out from there. So that's a big portion of my work, and it keeps that tool sharp. And I run the department, so I try to run it with more like an ad agency feel in mind than a typical radio production department. Now, sometimes we're scrambling and we don't have the resources of a big ad agency, but the general feel, I want the quality to be on that level. I want the writing to be on that level whenever it's possible. And I want the voiceover work to be as close as we can get to that level. So when somebody listens to a station, it's not obvious that one spot was produced locally and another was produced nationally or by an agency.
So I remember in radio, political season, you guys, the industry would just have so many spots running. Is that something that you can find yourself finding work through in the job that you do in political season, or does most stuff come in? Kevin and I just did a whole session on political. Is the reason I'm asking. Do you find that you can get work that way, or through clients that come in any genre?
I actually avoid political work entirely, and
Wow.
And my reason for that, obviously, it comes through the station, and there are political buys. But my reason for avoiding it entirely is because I don't want to upset another client because I'm voicing a candidate or an issue that they may disagree with. So I call in a lot of favors when I have political work. First of all, I have it set up with our management so that I can get a little bit of a budget. So I can throw somebody a couple $100 who's in another market, a friend of mine, and get their voice on it to keep my in-house voices away from it.
Smart.
So that's kind of where I touch with political. The only part that I am willing to voice is the paid for tag at the end, paid for by whatever organization. I'll do that, but outside of that, I try to steer entirely clear of political. And if it's a local candidate, I try to get them to come in and record their own spot, because that just simplifies the process very much.
Hey there, this is George the Tech, and you're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell.
I bet your station sounds so good because it's refreshing. Bobby and I, come from radio. I did it for 18 years. I was production director for a long, long time for a group of stations, the Arkansas Radio Network. And, at the time, I didn't quite understand, the ad agency side and then the radio side. I was just making spots,
Sure.
I was just having fun and doing my thing. But now that we're in the world we're in, I bet your station sounds so good because of your earnest effort to keep the ads on an agency level. When did that kind of kick in for you? Have you done that since you've been in radio, or has it been over the last several years?
Not since I've been in radio. Like I said, I started at 16, and I really didn't know anything for a while. That kind of became dominant while I was in St. Louis. I moved to St. Louis and got a job at my dream radio station when I was 20, and that was 105.7 The Point. It was the rock alternative station there.
Nice.
And I was doing on-air production and imaging work and having the time of my life. I wasn't making any money, but it was loads of fun. It was, I think, the best job that a guy in his early 20s could possibly have. And while I was there, their creative services director, it wasn't that he necessarily said that he was focused on an agency sound, but he was exclusively a production guy. He wasn't an on-air guy who was doing production. He was just production, and he cared very much about the quality. And that's kind of where that developed, was working under him. He held himself and his own work to a high standard, and so I followed that. And others in the building followed that too. And so those were good sounding stations. And then after that, it became something that I would fight for. So after St. Louis and a little break where I went to work at Sweetwater in tech support for a while, I was hired by Learfield Sports. And I don't know if you're familiar with Learfield Sports, but they oversee broadcasts for basically every college radio broadcast in the country, amongst other things, naming rights and things like that. But I was hired as their commercial production coordinator. And when I got there, there was really no focus on quality. And that's not a knock to them. It was just they didn't know how to. It was high volume, lots of spots coming in. And it was just get it done, rip it and read it and move on. And I couldn't change that because of the volume, but I did find ways to add processing and consistency and build them into single keyboard shortcuts for everybody. So at the end of a spot, somebody hits one button and it comes out sounding pretty good. And I tried to make some other things more efficient, but I fought everywhere I could to raise that bar. And part of the reason that I left that job, because it was an excellent company, excellent group of people, was because I wanted to return to somewhere where the volume wasn't that high and I could focus more on quality. And so when I really came back to it, I worked with a guy named Dan Osborne, who is a fabulous voice actor. Dan hired me, and he hired me knowing his weaknesses. So a lot of people get kind of territorial when they're hiring somebody who is younger, and Dan is not that. He specifically hired me to come in and kind of tear apart the way they did everything and improve it. And Dan and I are still very close. We have lunch regularly, and I took over his seat a few years later, and he and I really had the same vision. I brought organizational skills that weren't there before, and some different ways of looking at things, and obviously the technical side. But he had that same vision of, let's make it agency quality. Let's fight to make it good. So at work, I have a little bit of a reputation as being difficult, because I will fight for every single spot, no matter how insignificant it is. And over time, many of the salespeople have come to appreciate that, but it has taken years for some of them to recognize that there is a benefit to that, because most salespeople just want to get it on the air. And so it's not just having a vision for it. It's fighting for it, and sometimes it's fighting every day to keep that quality high and convince people that it is worth an extra day to make it right, or worth going back to the client and saying, your copy is terrible. How about this copy? Whatever the case may be, whatever it is that we can do to elevate at least one level up from what's expected of us, that's what I try to do.
Don't go anywhere. The Making Waves VO podcast returns in a moment.
Oh, Bobby, it's that time of year again. It's very, very exciting. Voiceover Atlanta is coming. The biggest voiceover conference in all of the land is coming. And our good friends, Full Compass, are going to be there with a booth.
I love this. They're coming in as one of the major sponsors for VO Atlanta, which means they're not going to be all over, not only going to be all over the brochure and the signage and everything, but they are going to have a big booth in the exhibition area. So
I like big booths, and I cannot lie.
I knew you were going to say that. So make sure you stop by the Full Compass booth because we'll probably be hanging out with them too because they're our new best friends.
There's going to be discounts. There's going to be experts there to talk about gear. If you're just getting into voiceover and you want to talk to somebody that's a pro about how to get set up, they're going to help you. They're not going to try to oversell you on anything. They're just going to give you good, solid advice, and then you take it from there. And then, hey, take their discount code. And if you need something, use the discount code and save some money. It's going to be great for everybody, and we cannot wait for VO Atlanta and Full Compass's sponsorship there. And Bobby, if this guy, I'm pointing at myself, if this guy gets off his tail and gets it ordered, we're going to have some Making Waves VO podcast swag to get, too.
You haven't done that yet?
I'm sorry. I got to get it ordered. We got time.
Hey, if you can't get to the booth for Full Compass, you can always go online, fullcompass.com. Check out all the different gear they have, their exceptional service, free shipping, great consultants to help you with what you need, and much, much more. Fullcompass.com.
Low price guarantee. Don't forget about that, too. Yeah, Full Compass, fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
And now, back to Making Waves.
Well, let's talk tech, okay? Because I know you're just dying to jump into it. First off, how many microphones do you own?
At this moment, not that many. Let me
I'm
count.
shocked.
I've got 3 416s, TLM 103, 4 SE 2200s, an SM7. I've got a ribbon mic that I couldn't tell you the model of, and I've got a little handheld mic, and then a little USB mic somewhere. So that's the extent of it.
I love that Emmet says that not that many, but he has to count.
Right?
I was working for this gear company where I had a true mic locker. Every mic I could get my hands on, I got my hands on. And now most of them serve a daily purpose or a regular purpose. At that point, it was more of a collection and how many can I get? So I have sold off a lot, and I've sold off a large amount of gear because I had gear everywhere too. Console on the desk and racks full of gear, and I've whittled that down. I've still got racks, but not nearly the amount that I once did.
It seems like Emmet, anytime somebody asks about a microphone, Emmet will jump in. I love it. But one of the big questions that pops up on these sites a lot are about extraneous noises. As a matter of fact, I think the day doesn't go by that somebody won't talk about soundproofing or sound treating their booth or their studio. One of the most recent ones, I don't know if you saw it, Kevin, was about the cicada broods are coming.
Oh, I did see that.
And I think,
Emmet, you chimed in on that,
yes,
didn't you?
Yes, he did.
I did.
Yes.
I did because when Brood X came through here a few years ago, it was one of the loudest noises I have ever heard in my life. It was unbelievably loud here.
Can you guys hold on for 1 second? Can you hear this? I live 20 miles from Fort Campbell, and their helicopters go by me all the time. And I wanted you to hear how much things shake because it's exactly what we're talking about.
But those low frequencies don't pick up so much, right? Like, I mean, a helicopter noise is going to be on the lower, it's more of a feel, right, Emmet?
It is more of a feel. You'll see it in the waveform, but you may not necessarily hear it. But if you do a cut where that low frequency is, you're likely to get a click there. Even if you don't hear the sound, you'll hear the click from the cut. Okay. So it's still one of those things you have to worry about. And usually I'm an advocate of just putting on a high-pass filter and filtering that stuff out.
So is that your best advice if people ask you about construction noises or wood chippers or appliances running, is a filter?
For the low-frequency stuff, low-frequency stuff exists everywhere. It's unavoidable. It doesn't matter if you're out in the country. Just nature has a lot of low frequencies, and they carry a long, long way. You may not even be near the source of the noise, and it's still going to be there. If you get a real sensitive mic, the TLM 103 is a good example. Mm-hmm. No matter where you put that, unless it is in just an expertly built, outstanding studio, when you start recording, you're going to see low-frequency rumble there. And it's going to look like you have more noise than you have. And it can be dead silent, and you'll still see this waveform of this noise going across. A high-pass filter at 30 or 40 hertz isn't going to affect your voice at all, but it will get rid of that subsonic rumble that is making that noise appear in the waveform.
Hello, this is Rebecca Lee. Psych, girl, let me stop playing. It's me, Rebecca Lee. You're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin and Bobby.
Love it. Emmett, okay, so let's go back just a little bit and talk about those kinds of things. And we're talking about mics and room noise and that kind of thing. I've always, I talk to people getting into the biz. I've helped people with tech. Not like you can, though, obviously. But when they talk about their setup and all this stuff, I'm like, get your room sounding right, whatever that be. If it's a closet full of clothes, whatever that is, don't worry about the microphone first. Worry about that secondary. What is your process when helping somebody set up a studio?
The first process is for me to listen. That's the most important thing. Just because a setup is cheap doesn't mean it sounds bad, and just because it's expensive doesn't mean it sounds good. Mm-hmm. And so it's a matter of figuring out where we are. When I'm working with somebody in depth, I work hard to teach them to listen as well, because I think that's the forgotten attribute that voice actors need to have. They need to be good listeners. And I don't know that we talk about that enough, but it's not just listening from the technical perspective, also to other performances and things like that. Listening is an important part of the gig. And from my seat, listening on the technical side, being able to identify what you're hearing. When you hear a sound that you don't like or a tone that you don't like, being able to figure out what that might be. And if you need to go room to room to track down the source of it, that's important too. And then when I'm talking to somebody, we'll figure out what we can do to minimize it, and if we can eliminate it altogether entirely. But frequently there's a balance where maybe we can minimize it a little bit, and then we'll bring in noise reduction, RX or whatever, to take care of the rest of it. But I do like to start at all of the physical changes that we can make and identify what it is, and then tackle it from there.
What do you think about foam? Because you have talent asking about, I didn't buy enough foam, or I need to buy more foam. What's your answer?
I hate foam.
I thought you did.
You're more of a panel guy or wood that's laced, or what is your process in that regard?
Acoustic panels just tend to be a much better value. Okay. Even if you don't build them yourself, they're more effective, and they don't cost. A few panels doesn't cost more than a whole lot of foam does, and a few panels will get you further, and they'll look nicer, and they're not going to degrade in a few years and turn into little dust that you find everywhere. I'm not completely anti-foam. There are places to use foam. In very tight booths, I like the Auralex Leonard traps, and those are made of foam, and I like them because they're just a big, dense piece of foam that will fit in a corner, and they're not very expensive, and they will help the sound of a tiny booth. But in general, I advocate for panels, whether homemade or from someplace like GIK.
So a lot of talent seem to be obsessed with getting all the different, just add-ons like compression and equalizing and normalizing to their auditions. So how do you respond to that? Let's just say somebody who's just starting out, or maybe been in the business for a year, maybe two, and they're just big on buying all this extra equipment and getting their compression and equalization on every audition. What's your answer on that?
We always start, at some point, we talk about the performance and the fact that needs to be front and center. And frequently they will try to jump ahead in the gear, and I will pull them back and say, let's look at your space. What can we do in the space to improve things? And I like talking about the gear too. I want to get to the point where we can talk about mics and compression and EQ and things like that, but it doesn't make sense to go there until the other things are solved. Once those other things are solved, then the conversations get more fun, and then we can have those conversations about what we're going to do to take things to the next level, what we're going to do from the technical side. But you gotta have a foundation before you try to build the rest of the house, and that's where I try to start and pull people back to all the time. And I'm very quick to tell people I have a large analog front end. You're hearing me right now through a 416 and a stack of analog processors. And that's me. Nobody needs that. Nobody is going to book more because they have that. And I don't mince words when it comes to that. Nobody needs it. Nobody needs the type of front end that I have. I don't need the type of front end that I have. I have it because I want it, and I've been doing this a long time, and I've been fortunate enough that I can put the money into it to have that. But it's like leather seats in a car. If the car has no wheels, the leather seats don't matter.
That's a good analogy.
Right. So I try to pull people away from that unless they have truly reached everything else they need to be. They're getting solid bookings, and they're like, I want knobs to play with. I want it to look cool. Then we can have that conversation. But most people contacting me are not at the level they want to be. They're trying to get to the level that they want to be. Every once in a while, one comes through, and it's somebody who's done really, really well, and they just want to spend money. They just want to have more toys, and those are the most fun. But I'm not really helping them exactly. I'm not making their situation better. I'm just making it suit them better, or helping them make themselves comfortable. That's a big part of it, is just getting people to back off on the thought. I'm not opposed to processing auditions. I advocate processing auditions, but everything else has to be right first before you start focusing on that. I had a guy just last week, a young guy, send me his samples, and it's one of the rare times where his space just sounded near perfect.
Wow.
And in the beginning, I don't ask what people are using until I have a reason to ask that specific question, because I don't want it to cloud my judgment. Mm-hmm. So it was, I assumed that he had maybe invested in a Whisper Room or a Studio Bricks or something like that. No, it was just a closet, and not only that, it was a closet in a one-bedroom apartment.
Wow. And
every day he would get up and rehang the blankets, and every night take the blankets down so they could use the closet.
Wow.
And he said that's how he gets his daily workout, is hanging those things. But I mean, it sounded near perfect. So we just jumped right to the conversation about the mics and processing and things like that, because his space sound, if he had said, oh, I spent $16,000 on a Studio Bricks, and I've put another $2,000 worth of acoustic panels in there, I would have believed him. It sounded that good.
Hello, everybody. This is Dave Walsh of The Trutel, and you're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with my friends Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell.
Emmet Andrews has written the book, VO Studio Companion, the Home Voiceover Recording Instruction Manual. Emmet, tell us the impetus. What made you come up with, what made you think of writing that?
All of the stuff I write on Facebook. And
you're like, I'm tired of writing this. Here, take it.
That's exactly right. And at the time I started it, that was my thinking. I'll get all my thoughts out here, and then I won't respond as much. I still respond the same amount. It's still, I'm still always on Facebook, but it was good to get that out. I wrote it almost entirely on my phone, laying in bed.
Really?
And I even put a lot of the formatting together on my phone. I would say it was about 90% on my phone, and then the last 10% I did on the computer. It was just sitting down and getting the words out of my mind, whatever happened to pop into my mind. And I've been for a few years threatening to release a second edition, and I need to do that. It's mostly written. It's just other things have gotten in the way. Life has gotten in the way.
Of course.
But it's sitting there. So a little of the information is dated. Like there's a page on ISDN. We don't need to talk about ISDN anymore. Nobody has ISDN. But that is what that is. That's me thinking through everything. And it was really good for me to do that because I had to kind of take my mind to the beginning and then step up from there. Rather than just jump into the real technical stuff, the stuff that I think about normally, I had to go backwards to the basics and figure out how do I explain this without losing somebody? How do I take somebody from not knowing anything to knowing a lot of things? What does that look like? And that's the way I really tried to approach the writing of that. With each topic, where it starts at a real basic level, and by the end of it, there's some fairly advanced stuff that you may have no reason to read, but if you do read it beginning to end, there's a good chance you're going to understand things you never thought you could understand.
Tell us where we can get it.
Oh, it's on Amazon. I'm going to read a couple of reviews for you really quick, Emmett and Bobby, if you don't mind. Yeah, it's available on Amazon. Tom says, the best book on everything audio I've read so far. Jeff says, this is the premier reference guide to Adobe Audition. Wayne says, concise, easy to read and comprehend. And then generic Amazon customer says, beware! Beware the Kindle book not compatible with the Kindle Paperwhite.
Oh, Emmett, you're such a loser.
And James, here's one though. James A. Muffett, I'll let y'all put that together.
Yeah, really.
This should be on every voice actor's digital shelf and real shelf in the paperback version. So those are some great reviews. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. And a lot of people are being helped by that. And Emmett, before we let you go here in just a minute, I wanted to see if you have, we do a regular segment called Nightmare Sessions. Now, it's typically when a voice actor goes into a session and, the session goes horribly wrong. Do you have any tech assistance nightmare sessions or times when you've had a technical issue where you just couldn't wrap your head around what was going on?
Nightmare Sessions!
I have two. I'll use two. When I was working for this gear company, one of them is a short story, and that's the when I couldn't figure out what was going on. I had I answered the phone. I worked in the tech support department, and Hans Zimmer's engineer was on the phone.
Oh my gosh!
And
wow,
he was very respectful. He started from the beginning. He explained the entire system. And it was the most complicated thing I have ever heard in my life.
Wow.
I understood it to the level of understanding what he was doing, how he was using it, but nowhere near a level that I needed to understand how to troubleshoot it. It was like multiple computers working together, each one playing different instruments and all being connected to a main computer that was kind of the master score computer where everything was laid out. It was just extremely in-depth. And I handed it off to one of our senior guys, Todd Tatnell, who is an expert. And he I think he spent about 4 hours on the phone, but he solved the issue.
Wow.
So that was super impressive. That was something that was just plain over my head, not going to touch it. It would have been fun to play around with it, and maybe we would have gotten to the bottom of it. But when you're dealing with Hans Zimmer, he doesn't have time to be an experiment.
That's remarkable. What about the other story?
Oh, it's the worst tech story ever. It was a woman who bought an iPad and nothing else, no audio related stuff, just an iPad. And I would try to speak to her. She called repeatedly and would yell at me and then hang up. And then she would email and I would email her back, and she wouldn't read the email. She would just send back terrible, angry things.
Oh, no.
And I couldn't even begin to figure out what the problem was with this iPad because she wouldn't give me the opportunity. There was no window to even understand what the problem was. And after like 3 days, she reached out to my supervisor. And my supervisor said, just replace the iPad. Get it back from her, give her a new one. I said, okay, I'll do that. I did. And then she called and screamed again because the new one didn't work either. And finally, I was able to get a word in edgewise and find out that it wouldn't turn on. She didn't know how to use the power button.
No.
And she didn't know to plug it in.
No.
Oh, you got to charge that bad boy up.
It was charged. It's just, Apple products, when you plug them in, they'll come on if they're turned off. And she hadn't done either one of those things. There's a little quick start card that says something about plugging it in. She hadn't read that. And it took what should have taken 2 seconds took a week because of all the screaming and anger because she took it out of the box and it wasn't just on and working.
Oh, wow. Gosh. Wow. Well, some of us just are not technologically gifted, I guess.
There are a million nasty tech stories. I get it because nobody calls tech support because they're happy and their gear is working. Everybody's upset. Even the friendliest people, they're not happy. Their gear's not working. What has been nice about doing this kind of in my own space and not for that pro audio sales company, they didn't buy the gear from me. They're reaching out to me for help, and so there is no entitlement for that help. And so they're much friendlier from the start. I don't have to calm them down other than to say, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you. We'll get to the bottom of this." They're not angry with me, whereas working for a retailer, they're often angry with that retailer, even if it's not the retailer's fault. And so I love working with the vast majority of people that I work with. I don't have any bad experiences working on my own with people because they just approach it differently. They approach me differently.
Well, we know you offer the free online consultation. I've seen that on your site or your Facebook page one, but people can also hire you to create stacks for them, right? And if so, how can they get a hold of you, Emmet?
My website, emmetandrews.com, is the quickest way to find me, or find me on Facebook. And it's not just stacks that I offer. I offer all kinds of technical things and even sometimes go beyond technical. I'm actually helping a content creator, an influencer right now, design her space, including all the colors, the paints, the lighting, everything top to bottom.
Wow.
She also does voice work, and so it has to be a space that looks good on camera and has the vibe she wants for her videos, but also sounds good enough to work in. And so I'm taking the whole thing top to bottom, and I do all of that. But when somebody reaches out to me, my goal is not to get their money. And I'm kind of unique in that regard. My goal is to give them some advice and they go solve their own problem. And then sometime when they've made $1 million and then they want to go buy all that expensive gear they don't need, then they can give me money. But my initial goal is always to help them. And so there's a lot that I don't charge for because I want people to do well. I want them to be successful. I want them to value quality. I want them to see that as something to aim for, because if we all preserve quality and we all demand quality, clients will too, and then we don't have to deal with $5 voiceovers and cheap AI replacing us.
So refreshing. Thank you.
I love that. That is so cool. Thank you for your kindness and generosity to the industry. One quick little question, it just popped into my head. Do you work on actual gear?
As far as doing repairs, like getting inside and soldering?
Yeah, like say, for example, somebody had an Avalon 737 SP that was maybe had a power issue. Is that anything you work on? Asking for a friend. I
do not, but if it's clicking, that's bad tube. I learned that about the 737. They make a little quiet clicking noise when there's a problem with them, with the tube, and it needs to be replaced. But no, I don't. Occasionally on my own stuff, I'll get in there and mess with it, but I'm not qualified to do all the electrical engineering side of things. And I will help people track down service centers and things like that if they just simply don't know where to go.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people are when they have that kind of problem, they're looking for a less expensive alternative to the factory service centers. And for high-end gear, I would say there is none.
Yeah, I've had it worked on before, and it was it was a few $100, and but it's worth it. It's an investment. It's like a car almost. It's something you're gonna drive all the time, and there's gonna be repair, there's gonna be maintenance.
Yep, and with good gear, it's worth fixing. I sent a speaker in earlier this year, and it was around $800 to repair.
Wow.
Power amp went out, and it's just one of those things that if you're going to use good quality stuff, you have to be prepared to fix it. And if you don't want to do that, buy cheap stuff, throw it away, and buy new.
Well, Emmet is the man. If he gives you advice, it's probably accurate. And if you see something on Facebook that he answers, I would definitely go with it.
It's gold, Jerry, gold.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Emmet, thank you
Our
for your
pleasure.
time, man. It's been a blast. Learned a lot, too. What a cool guy. We've never talked to him in person, but just via chat. And everything I saw on chat was, came true with that conversation with him. He's just such a cool, nice guy, wanting to help the industry.
I know, and that's what I love about him. I mean, every single time I have DM'd him to ask him something, I will always say, hey, give me your Venmo, I'll send you something. Nope, not just let people know the answer. And it's like, that is so refreshing. I love it.
And that's the same exact thing he did with me. I can't remember what it was, but I was talking about, pulling the trigger on a new Apollo interface, which I'm still going to be doing, and I'll be buying that from Full Compass. Thank you very much. And I was like, what do I do? And should I get this? What should I get? And he was like, well, what are your wants? What are your needs? And we went back and forth several emails, and this is the man's time. And I was the same way, Bobby. I was like, dude, let me throw you some PayPal money. He's like, no, man. Don't. He's like, I'm happy to help. He's like, if you end up pulling the trigger on it and you want to do a session and we get it dialed in for you, he's like, then I'll let you hire me for that service. I'm like, done.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. But
I'm going to buy the book.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was going to say, what did you learn, in our career voiceover, and just based on what he was talking about?
Not really. I mean, I kind of follow him a lot on these sites on Facebook. So I always respect what he says. So I've listened to a lot of different things. I don't know if I've learned anything. I really respect him so much is what that my takeaway. I mean,
he's good for the industry. Mm-hmm. He really is. One of the good guys of the industry. So love it. The Making Waves VO podcast presented by Full Compass, fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
Bobby, we're going to have a great episode next time. It's kind of up in the air if we're going to go this way, or this way, but it is going to be fun, exciting, informative entertainment on the very next episode of the Making Waves VO podcast.
See you then.
The Making Waves VO podcast is produced by K2 Media Productions with hosts Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell. Sound design and editing by Jason Traver. Production assistance by Lacey Deline. Publicity and social media by Shannon Scott and Silas Phillips. Be sure to subscribe to the Making Waves VO podcast on your favorite platform. For all episodes, merchandise, gear, and more, visit makingwavesvo.com. Until next time, I'm AJ McKay. Keep making waves.